You have a list. You always have a list. Ideas, plans, projects, things you are going to start, things you are going to finish, things that are going to change everything once you finally get around to them. The list never gets shorter. It only grows. And somewhere between the list and the life you imagined, there is a gap. A persistent, frustrating, quietly exhausting gap that nobody talks about honestly enough. You are not lazy. That is the first thing to understand. Lazy people do not lie awake at night thinking about everything they want to build. Lazy people do not feel the particular ache of potential going unused. Lazy people do not carry the weight of ambition they cannot seem to translate into action. That weight is yours. And it means something. What you are is distracted. And distraction, unlike laziness, is not a character flaw. It is a psychology. It is a pattern. And patterns, once understood, can be changed. The first thing to understand about the distracted but ambitious mind is that it runs on a different fuel than ordinary productivity. Most productivity advice is built for people who know what they want and simply need to be more organized about getting it. But that is not your problem. Your problem is not organization. Your problem is that your brain generates so much possibility, so many directions, so many versions of what your life could look like, that choosing one feels like betraying all the others. Psychologists call this analysis paralysis. When the number of options exceeds a comfortable threshold, the brain does not choose the best one. It freezes. It scrolls. It opens another tab. It makes coffee. It thinks about the choice rather than making it. And the more ambitious you are, the worse this gets, because the stakes feel higher and the cost of choosing wrong feels catastrophic. Here's what that looks like in practice. You spend 45 minutes researching the best productivity app instead of doing the work. You read 3 books about writing instead of writing. You think about the business for 6 months and never register the domain. The thinking is real work. It feels like progress, but it is a loop. A very comfortable, very seductive loop that asks nothing of you except your time. Researcher Barry Schwartz at Swarthmore College has spent decades studying what he calls the paradox of choice. His findings are consistent and counterintuitive. More options do not make people happier or more effective. They make people more anxious, more prone to regret, and less likely to commit. The distracted, ambitious person lives inside this paradox every day. The world is full of possibility, and possibility is the enemy of action. The second thing to understand is that ambition without direction is not ambition. It is energy. Raw, unfocused, restless energy that feels like ambition because it is urgent and it matters to you. But that goes nowhere because it has no channel. Think about water. Water is powerful. It can carve canyons, drive turbines, sustain life. But only when it moves in a direction. When it spreads across a flat surface, it evaporates. Your ambition is the same. The size of your drive is not the problem. The shape of it is. This is where the Japanese concept of ikigai becomes relevant. Ikigai is your reason for being. It is not your career, not your goals, not your 5-year plan. It is the thing that sits at the intersection of what you love, what you are good at, what the world needs from you, and what you can be sustained by. When you find that intersection, something changes. The distractedness does not disappear, but it narrows. It finds a home. Because when you know your ikigai, you have a compass. And a compass does not eliminate the noise. It just tells you which direction matters. The third thing to understand is that the distracted, ambitious mind is often a deeply creative mind that has not been given the right container. Neuroscientist Ned Hallowell at Harvard Medical School has spent decades studying attention and creativity. His research consistently shows that the same cognitive profile that makes sustained focus difficult also produces unusual pattern recognition, high associative thinking, and a genuine capacity for original ideas. The brain that cannot sit still for a spreadsheet can often see connections that more linear thinkers miss entirely. The distraction is not the opposite of the gift. In many cases, it is the same coin, just showing its other face. But here is the problem. Most systems are built for linear thinkers. School rewards sitting still and following one thread at a time. Offices reward predictability and task completion. The distracted, ambitious mind was never designed for those environments, so it learned to feel like a failure inside them, even when it was actually doing something else entirely. Even when it was building something invisible that would eventually matter enormously. The fourth thing to understand is about kaizen, the Japanese philosophy of continuous improvement that says the goal is not perfection on the first attempt. The goal is 1% better today than yesterday. For the distracted, ambitious person, this philosophy is not just useful, it is essential. Because the trap of the distracted, ambitious mind is an all-or-nothing relationship with effort. Either the conditions are perfect and the work is magnificent, or the conditions are imperfect and nothing gets done. Either you do the full workout or you skip it entirely. Either you write the whole chapter or you do not open the document. This binary thinking is not discipline. It is perfectionism dressed up as standards. Kaizen breaks that pattern. It says, do one push-up, write one paragraph, make one call. Not because one push-up will transform your body, but because one push-up keeps the identity alive. It keeps you someone who does the thing, even when the conditions are not ideal, even when the motivation is not there, even when you have been distracted for 3 weeks and feel like you are starting over. Because here is what the research on habit formation shows, and this is critical. Motivation follows action, not the other way around. You do not wait until you feel like doing the thing to do the thing. You do the thing, and the feeling comes after. The distracted, ambitious person gets this backwards. They wait for the inspiration, the energy, the perfect moment, the right mood. And while they are waiting, the weeks pass. The fifth thing to understand is that distraction is not random. It is protective. Psychologist Adam Grant at the Wharton School of Business has written extensively about procrastination and creative work. His research suggests that moderate procrastination, the kind where you delay starting but keep the task alive in your mind, can actually improve creative output by allowing more varied thinking before commitment. But chronic distraction, the kind that never resolves, is something different. It is avoidance wearing the costume of busyness. And what is it avoiding? Usually, fear. The fear of finding out that the thing you want to build is not as good as you imagined it. The fear of putting something real into the world and having it fail publicly. The fear that if you actually try, fully try, and it does not work, you will have no excuse left. Right now, as long as you have not really tried, the dream is still intact. The potential is still unlimited. Starting is the risk, because starting makes the gap between your vision and your reality visible. This is the painful truth that every distracted, ambitious person eventually has to face. The distraction is not in spite of the ambition. In many cases, it is because of it. The bigger the dream, the higher the stakes, the more the brain finds reasons to delay. The Japanese practice of gaman offers a useful counterweight here. Gaman means endurance with dignity. The quiet strength to tolerate difficulty without letting it stop you. Not the loudly publicized strength of the person who broadcasts their struggle for validation, but the internal, private strength of the person who shows up anyway. Who writes the paragraph when they do not feel like it. Who makes the call when they are afraid. Who begins again after the third false start without needing the beginning to feel triumphant. The sixth thing to understand is that the environment shapes behavior more reliably than willpower. This is perhaps the most practical insight in all of behavioral science, and the most consistently ignored. Willpower is a depleting resource. It runs out. It is unreliable. It fluctuates with sleep, blood sugar, stress, and a dozen other variables you cannot control. If your system for doing the work depends on willpower, your system will fail when it matters most. Environment does not deplete. Environment is constant. If your phone is on your desk, you will check your phone. If your phone is in another room, you will not. If your work is open on your screen when you sit down, you will do it. If it is buried under 6 other windows, you will not. These are not tests of character. They are tests of design. And the distracted, ambitious person almost always loses when they design nothing and then wonder why willpower was not enough. Design your environment for the person you want to be, not the person you are when you are tired and unfocused. Remove what competes for your attention. Simplify the path to the work. Make the distraction harder to access and the focus easier. Not because you are weak, but because you understand how attention actually works. And finally, the seventh thing to understand is that omoyari, the Japanese concept of compassionate consideration, has something to teach the distracted, ambitious person about the relationship between self and purpose. Omoyari is the practice of considering how your actions ripple outward, of asking, how does what I do, or fail to do, affect the people around me? This is not guilt. This is not pressure. This is a reframe. Because the distracted, ambitious person tends to experience their ambition as something for themselves, a private dream, a personal achievement. And when it stays private, it stays fragile, because it can always be postponed without consequences to anyone else. But when you connect your work to something outside yourself, when you recognize that the thing you are building matters to someone other than you, the stakes change. The delay has a cost that is visible, and that visibility is often what finally breaks the pattern. You have the list. You have always had the list. You have the ambition, the ideas, the potential that wakes you up at night. What you need is not more motivation. What you need is the understanding that the distraction is not who you are. It is a pattern. And patterns, approached with honesty and the right structure, bend. 1% better today. One thing chosen and held. One environment designed for focus. One dream connected to someone beyond yourself. You are not broken. You are distracted. And that is a very different problem. One that has a solution.